Now, it is a designated red day in the English Channel. That means the conditions for small boat crossings are there. And so far, 350 small boat migrants have made their way across the Channel, with more boats being sighted already.
Yeah, it could be another record day. Mike Tapp, though, the Labour MP for Dover and Deal, has declared enough is enough on these small boat crossings, and he's been teasing a bit of a major plan. Let's take a listen.
We're facing a national security crisis.
And Labour's very own Robert Jenrick joins us in the studio. Mike Tapp, I've got to ask, I mean, this is a dramatic video, but it is an incredibly serious subject.
It is, and this is something I'm taking very seriously, and I know the government are. And the point in this video is two things. Firstly, to explain what we're doing so far, and there has been a lot of work over the last year, you know, record deportation, processing has sped up, and getting the French to change their laws around tackling boats in shallow waters. I know you mentioned there about the Red Day crossings today, and I've had some pictures come in, unverified at this moment, of the French in the water trying to drag those boats back, and that's really important.
Is that the first time that we've seen something like that happen?
It is, and I think we all get frustrated. I do, the viewers do, I'm sure you guys do too, of those photos of the French stood there watching this happen. Now, they were constrained by the laws. Yvette Cooper's worked really hard to, with her diplomatic approach with the French, to get that changed. And I think, and we'll see if it's verified later, that that started today, and that's really good news.
A couple of photos of the French getting in the water isn't going to convince the public that this issue is going to be solved, though, is it?
We need to bring those small boat crossings down. There is a lot of work going on behind the scenes internationally against the gangs and domestically. But the fact is, we need to see that in the results, and there's things like offshore processing.
You genuinely think smashing the gangs is the way to achieve this? Because it's looking highly unlikely, Mike.
It's very much a part of the answer to the problem. It's a very complex issue. There's no sort of one policy that's going to sort this out, but things like offshore processing centres in the UK. Will the French allow us to put our military in their waters? Probably not, but it's a question worth asking. Our work around the ECHR is going to be really important, because we can't have these judgments abusing the ECHR.
Would you be happy to see the Royal Navy out there in the waters, potentially taking the boats back to France?
I think if it's fitting and working with the French, with their permission, that could have an impact. But of course, that's a bigger diplomatic question. Like, I get really frustrated if we can't deport a foreign paedophile. Something is not working, and that's why I'm really pleased to see the Home Office talking about tightening up the ECHR. So we can't do that. We've had Keir Starmer talking about offshore return centres if we can't.
But of course, you'd need more than, I think it's 31 member states of the ECHR. You need unanimity to agree any change to those rules. That's not going to happen.
No, but there's a lot you can do domestically. So if you look at the way Denmark have worked with the ECHR, and it's ensuring that the judgments are right and that it's not being misinterpreted. You know, we should be deporting violent foreign criminals, and that's what we're looking at doing.
Now, I've got to put to you something that the Chief Secretary of the Treasury said on the television last night. According to my colleagues in the press gallery in the lobby in Parliament, there was the most extraordinary briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesman, where they sort of completely stonewalled these questions. Darren Jones, who's the Chief Secretary, said last night that the majority of people in these boats are children, babies and women. Number 10 today is not willing to stand by that, but they do say that they have full confidence in the Chief Secretary. I mean, it's just flat out wrong, isn't it?
Well, Darren's a fantastic minister, and the work that he's been doing around the economy must not be ignored.
Irrelevant.
What I will say on this, I'll be really clear that we do see majority of those crossing being young men. Now, that's not acceptable, but a part of the reason for that is because they're relying on family reunion visas.
Why would you say they're children and women then, mainly?
You'll have to ask Darren,
you'll have to
ask Darren about that. I think he's a fantastic minister, but I'm being really clear now that what we're seeing coming over...
He's a senior cabinet minister. I mean, will you be, as the MP on the front line of this crisis, with your constituency seeing this happen every single day, will you meet with him and tell him the reality of this? I mean, government publishes its own figures that say at least 70% of these are adult men. More than 20% then are people under the age of 18, some of whom might suggest that maybe those people are lying about their ages as well. I mean, it's overwhelmingly men. It just beggars belief that he would say it wasn't.
I'm really clear, and I work with the Home Office, and I'm talking to them regularly about what I want to see going forward. Hence some of the detail in the video around processing centres, more deportations, getting harder on the smuggling gangs, working in shallow water, potentially using the military. We're doing a lot of this. We're moving this forward. There's no quick fix, but we're taking it very seriously.
I do have to put one more question to you, because there are reports that we've seen that the government have come up with some kind of sneaky way to technically stop the use of migrant hotels, essentially just sneakily buying them up, converting them into other accommodation in areas like Bristol, Cardiff, and then they could say, oh, we've ended the use of migrant hotels, but actually they're just multi-occupancy accommodation and private rentals.
There's a number of ways of doing this. The first is bringing down the small boat crossings. The second is deporting more that simply shouldn't be here. We're already seeing record numbers. And the third is potentially processing centres here to deal with that. If that's using what used to be a hotel, I don't have a particular problem with that. Let's get this moving. Let's get them deported.
It's not what people wanted, though, when they wanted the end of the use of the hotels for our taxpayers' money just to be used to buy them up.
Well,
it's a bit sneaky, don't you think?
My view is there's lots of different ways of doing this, and really it pins on taking out the smuggling gangs, increasing those deportations, processing quickly. Already record numbers. We've done a lot in a year, but there's more to go, and I'm sure there's more to come.
OK, well, we must say that the government has said that targeted measures will ensure that police have the powers they need to keep communities safe, filling the gap left over by removing previous powers. Good afternoon, Britain. Some breaking news to bring you. It's official. 350 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel this day so far. And hundreds more are apparently in the water. Let's go straight to Mark White, hope to bring us more on this. Another red day, would you say?
Yeah, a very busy day out in the English Channel as we speak. And we reported just on Wednesday, actually, that we had crossed 15,000 small boat arrivals for the year so far, which is very significant. And I think that was about 33% ahead, at least, of where we were at this point last year. However, it looks like by the end of today, we'll have passed 16,000 because 350 have arrived already into Dover, according to our producer Chris, who's been counting them in as they come into Dover Harbour on board these Border Force vessels, and now lifeboats. Hundreds more are out there in the Channel as we speak. It's another situation where Border Force has been overwhelmed by the number of boats coming across, because they have called out Dover lifeboat, Ramsgate lifeboat to assist Border Force. And I was just speaking just before you came to me to Chris, and he tells me that Dover lifeboat just coming into the harbour with another boatload of migrants. So a very worrying situation, of course, in terms of this continued
I'm interested to know, Chris, our guy down there, our man down there, how does he go about counting them? Has he literally just got a tally? He's just watching them come off the boats? He's not, making any assumptions over how many people might be on a boat, literally counting them in?
It's rudimentary, but it's accurate. He has a clicker, and he films it for us, and he clicks them off as they come off. They normally come off sort of in groups of 10, and he's just counting as he goes. And it's incredible that, when we get the actual official figures out, he's only ever usually 2 or 3 out. So when you're talking about maybe 700 crossing, to be only 2 or 3 out is amazing. So, we're right up to date and are way ahead of everyone else, and just being able to bring our audience. Listen, I know it infuriates so many people, but as a channel, it's important for us to continue documenting these major milestones in this ongoing crisis.
And importantly, we can see not only the numbers on those boats, but who is on those boats. We can see it with our own eyes.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, we get the reports all the time about these people, poor, wretched people fleeing.
Would you say it's mainly young women and little children?
I would say that absolutely it is not mainly young women and little children. And since this crisis has begun, official figures have shown actually that we're about 85% or so young men coming across the English Channel, represented a number of nations, multiple nations, Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria, many African countries, including Eritrea, Sudan, Southern Sudan.
Well, Mark White, thank you very much for that, because you have brilliantly teed us up for our very next point. We're joined by our political editor, Christopher Hope, because, Christopher, huge consternation at the heart of government at the moment. They seem to not quite recognise that the boats are mainly full of young men.
Yes, hi Tom. Hi Emily. Yeah, extraordinary moment in this briefing we get daily with the government spokesman. Now, last night on BBC Question Time, Darren Jones, number 2 in the Treasury, of course, his department says they can empty these asylum hotels by 2029. We'll wait and see if that happens. But he said this. He said that the majority of the people in these boats, these small boats, are children, babies and women when they cross the channel. That is demonstrably untrue, according to the government's own figures. Mark White there said 89%, but even going on what the government says, since 2018, 70% of illegal arrivals across the channel are men over the age of 18. We see these pictures coming in, we see it out there, and yet in this briefing with number 10 spokesman, he refused to correct the minister. He said extraordinarily that the government has confidence in Darren Jones, who's the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, and all they say simply is this. He says simply that we've been clear that our focus is on tackling these vile gangs who deal in human misery. Moments ago, Mike Tapp, the MP for Dover and Deal, of course, a Labour MP, was on your show, Tom, and you asked him about this, and he said to you that we do see the majority of those crossing are young men. You'll have to ask Darren about that, his comments. But it just strikes me, they are literally gaslighting GB News viewers and listeners to say that most people crossing the channel are, as I say here, I'll say it again, they say it's children, babies and women. That is not the case, according to the government's own figures and what we see with our own eyes. And this is what infuriates people, I think, watching what's happening here. Will the government not own up to what is happening, instead trying to mislead people, apparently, on the national broadcaster?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at footage right now of people arriving in Dover on the coast here, and they are men. They are men, the majority of men. Of course, there will be women and children. Of course, there are. We've seen the statistics. They are available to everyone if you want to see them. But as we can see,
Can you see a single little child on that boat?
Oh, there.
Can you? There may be one or two. Oh, there's one being carried there. But let's just repeat. I've got the data in front of me. Since 2018, 70% adult males. But, of course, in more recent years, that's actually shifted. 87% of people arriving on these boats are over 18. 88% of those are men. Of the 13% of arrivals who say they're under 18, 78% are boys.
Yeah, it's boys and men, isn't it, Christopher?
Yes, it just beggars belief. And I think part of the problem this government has with this crisis is not saying what is happening, not being clear about what we can see, what the government says, and trying to... Yes, of course, in many cases, I'm sure, on these migrants crossing, they've got difficult stories to tell. It's been very, very hard for them. But they are not women and children and babies. They are young men of working age. And until we start talking about the issue as it actually is, you'll continue to have people thinking being misled about the problem by our ministers.